Chapter 2: Flora and Fauna. The word biodiversity comes to mind when contemplating the tremendous variety of life on this subtropical island. And I don't mean human life, though with roughly 3 million visitors descending on these shores annually, there's always a glut of humanity available to both amuse and astonish. No, I'm talking about the island's natural ecosystem. Despite being absurdly overbuilt, endlessly landscaped, and maniacally spritzed with carcinogenic herbicides and pesticides to hell and back, the environment here somehow thrives with an abundance of plant and animal life. For this, I imagine we have our fine climate, which attracts far more than just snowbirds, to thank. The island is warmed by the Gulf Stream, producing average daytime and ocean temperatures that both hover around a balmy 70 degrees. Summers are long and delicious. Winters are so short and mild it's hard to call them winters without cracking a smile. In terms of flora, while there's no shortage of everything from yellow cannas and jacks in the pulpit to water lilies and marsh rushes, the poster plant here is Spanish moss, which, oddly enough, isn't a moss or even a lichen, but a flowering plant. Found in tropical and subtropical climates, Spanish moss is most often associated with the coastal regions of the southeastern United States. The other non-tree native to these parts with worldwide recognizability is beachgrass. Tall and balletic in the ocean breezes, it grows on the dunes overlooking the Atlantic and has appeared in the foreground of a million kitschy sunrise photos. But as popular as it is, beachgrass is nowhere near as famous as Spanish moss. Around here, Spanish moss typically hangs from the limbs of southern live oaks. Iconic in the Old South, these gnarled trees manage to look antediluvian even when they're scarcely more than saplings. To my eye, live oaks possess a cartoon gothicism that makes them resemble, particularly when draped with low-hanging moss, scary fake trees out of a Tim Burton horror flick. While the area may be famous for its oaks, it's synonymous with its palmettos. The state is actually nicknamed the Palmetto State. Palmetto trees are everywhere. They line streets, dot courtyards, sway over beaches, appear on bumper stickers, even barf, decorate doormats, bath towels, throw pillows, and valances. Faced with the borderline religious reverence for the sabal palmetto in these parts, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that palmettos are basically just fat little palm trees. While real palms can reach 80 feet, palmettos rarely grow higher than a 2-story house. Whereas date palms produce one of nature's tastiest treats, palmettos don't produce jack. But even though they're ugly and mostly useless compared to their cousins, I still adore palmettos. I paint them sometimes, and find myself jealous of the squirrel family that lives in a perfectly straight palmetto beside our condo's pool. As if looking down their noses at us silly humans who buy boxed food from big boxes and live in little boxes, they gather acorns in the courtyard and return bearing them in their mouths to their airy penthouse. Squirrels may be ubiquitous, but they're hardly the island's mascots. Alligators would probably fit the bill. The most famous statue around here is of a wealthy gentleman from circa 1960, casually strolling along beside a huge gator as if it were his well-behaved pet. There must be 1,000 bilingual signs posted along our waterways that read, "Danger, do not feed the alligators. Peligro, no alimente los lagartos." Gators usually avoid humans, for good reason, since gator tail finds itself on many an overpriced Lowcountry menu. But when these powerful reptiles are spoiled, they can, much like teenagers, become presumptuous and even downright mean. Less representative of the island to the outside world, but very well known to the local population, are feral cats. While homelessness is a human problem in most of America, here it's mostly a feline issue. Try sipping a coffee at an outdoor cafe or dining en plein air without seeing feral cats loitering in the shade hoping for a handout. It practically can't be done. The situation has caused a number of cat fights between business owners and animal rights activists. The former would be willing to pay to get rid of what they see as nuisances that frighten off customers, The latter would be willing to pay to get rid of annoying business owners while spending millions of taxpayer dollars to protect their furry friends. I have nothing against cats, feral or otherwise, but I do tend to distrust people who care more about animals than people. The island's feral cat lady comes to mind. Almost without fail, whenever I bike to Pilates, I see her late model Mercedes parked beside the road with its trunk open. That's where she keeps an apparently infinite stash of cat food that day after day she stands under the trees feeding a rowdy crowd of feral felines. She's a regular bejeweled St. Francis under the oaks, doling out food to the furball masses. I can't help thinking if she put a fraction of that much capital and energy into assisting her starving human brothers and sisters, the world would truly be a happier place. After all, cats have 9 lives in which to hope things get better, but we humans only have one. White-tailed deer are also numerous on the island. So numerous, in fact, they're regularly culled to reduce the number of life-threatening collisions with vehicles. On this point, I stand with the animal rights activists in insisting that tourists, not deer, should be culled to decrease accidents. One of my fondest wildlife memories here stars a white-tailed buck. My family stayed in a temporary rental on a golf course during the fall after we arrived. I'd recently torn up my MCL body surfing. In order not to go batshit crazy from being cooped up inside like the gimp I was, I took to spending my afternoon sunbathing on the porch with a view of the 11th hole. On a bright Saturday afternoon in November, lo and behold, a magnificent 8-point buck trotted out from behind the pines and stood absolutely still, staring sideways at the flag as if readying himself for a birdie. Not another human soul was in sight. This Wild Kingdom moment was all mine. Motionless as a stump, the buck must have stood there 30 seconds. He was so perfectly beautiful and so beautifully perfect, I forgot to breathe. At length, his keen ears hearing a golf cart approaching before mine did, he sprung forward like an arrow and disappeared in 2 leaps into the pine woods on the far side of the course. Other noteworthy examples of native fauna include huge multicolored dragonflies filling the island's airways with buzzing traffic from August through October. Green anoles, slender lizards with a bright red throat that puffs out like a balloon. Spring peepers, tiny chorus frogs intent on providing a relaxing soundtrack to the island life. A selection of snakes, both harmless and venomous. Tiny mosquitoes that show no mercy and take no prisoners. And last but not least, love bugs, black March flies that remain attached to one another for several days after mating, even in flight. Talk about a flying fuck. The beach, as you might expect, is particularly rich in terms of wildlife. Jumping and spinning playfully, bottlenose dolphins are a regular spectacle just offshore. Sharks and stingrays are also common sights. Sand dollars are abundant, especially at low tide, as are striped starfish. Knobbed whelks can sometimes be found buried just under the sand in the shallow surf. Loggerhead sea turtles, an endangered species whose nests, cordoned off for protection, dot the sand near the dunes from May through October, are an island favorite. Less popular, but equally fascinating, are cannonball jellyfish, so named because of their spheroid shape, which tend to wash ashore in great blooms. Fortunately, given the internal positioning of their stingers, cannonballs rarely sting, but they do use their mouths to expectorate sperm, subsequently taken in orally by another cannonball in order to reproduce. I appreciate many of the island's animals, but my personal favorites are the birds. Hardly a week goes by that we don't hear a barred owl calling from high in one of the live oaks in the courtyard at night, "Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you?" Red-tailed hawks, one of the largest and loveliest birds of their genus, are also a common sight. Occasionally, they perch on the railing of a vacant third-story balcony in our community, scanning the grounds for a tasty meal of rodent. Ospreys, aka seahawks, are another common bird of prey. While body surfing, I've watched them snatch wiggling fish out of the ocean with their talons. There's a huge osprey nest wedged atop a highway sign on the toll road that links to the mainland. On a good day, you can catch a glimpse of feathers as you pass underneath. If you're a bird watcher, when you die, this is definitely where you want to spend eternity. The marshes are veritable bird sanctuaries, literally fluttering with multiple varieties of owls, hawks, eagles, herons, woodpeckers, sandpipers, rails, terns, pelicans, ibises, gulls, you name it. Many of the same birds also grace the coastline. I particularly enjoy the great synchronized skeins of pelicans that fly above the waves in summer. How, being animals, they know how to write the letter V just so in the sky is anyone's guess. There's one type of bird that isn't native to the island, but that nevertheless lives here, a single condor. You can see him sometimes waist deep in the ocean, dancing with outspread wings. I know him well because, well, he's me. I used to be a crow. Crow was my power animal, an indwelling spirit utilized for numerous purposes by a plethora of indigenous cultures, as well as those of us civilized folk willing to humble ourselves enough to learn from them. If you're one of those fortunate enough to have been energized by power animals, you know just how potent they can be for healing, protection, and inspiration. In retrospect, it seems a no-brainer that the great horned owl that called me to art was a physical manifestation of my first power animal. Power animals come and go. When they leave, it's not a personal judgment against you. After all, they're just animals. They get bored easily. Their moving on simply means it's time for a new one. It's possible, maybe even common, to experience many power animals in a single lifetime. Crow came to me in my 20s, when I was suffering from a mysterious illness, similar in certain respects to fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. The spirit of Crow taught me how to make myself well again, as I describe in my way outside the box nonfiction books on inner genetic healing. I also credit Crow medicine with shepherding me through a number of dangerous situations and turbocharging much of my creativity over the past couple decades. Anthropologist Michael Harner writes extensively and eloquently about power animals, how to get them, and how to work with them. Dr. Harner taught at Berkeley, Columbia, and Yale, discovered Carlos Castaneda, and started a worldwide shamanic renaissance basically all by himself. One of his most fascinating stories, told in Cave and Cosmos, is of a perilous river crossing in the company of a group of Shuar men when he was conducting field research in the upper Amazon rainforest of Ecuador. Harner relates how he became exasperated to the point of accusing his guides of cowardice when the group, who had become lost, spent days stubbornly refusing to cross a raging stream in order to find their way home. Finally, on Harner's insistence, the group constructed 3 log rafts and crossed the river, but not before Harner's raft was overturned in the rapids and he and 2 of his companions almost drowned before reaching the far shore. That was a pretty close call. He quotes himself as saying, "I guess we are lucky to be alive." When his companions exchanged glances but made no reply, Harner, a typically know-it-all Westerner at this stage, accused them not only of being cowards but of falsely playing it cool, as if they'd never been scared in the first place, now that the crossing was a done deal. "Well, you see," explained one of the men, "we were not really afraid to cross the river because we cannot die, but we did not know about you." Translated, we had power animals to keep us from harm, but since some people don't, we weren't sure if you did. At that moment, writes Harner, the perilous Amazon River crossing opened a door to important spiritual knowledge. After that, I gradually learned from the Shuar that they were protected by spirit power. I also learned that such power can leave one. Thus, unprotected, people do indeed die. Nearly a year to the day after we moved here, a gut-wrenching tragedy was visited on my family when Lee's older brother, Byron, killed himself via carbon monoxide inhalation. For nearly as long as we'd been on the island, Byron, who lived 2 hours away in Colombia, had suffered from schizoaffective disorder. Just before his final depression, which was made worse, go figure, by antidepressants, Byron experienced a wacky manic phase in which he heard the posthumous voice of Steve Jobs telling him to stop being a PC guy and buy a MacBook Pro instead. After he complied, He heard Jerry Garcia instructing him from beyond the grave to pay Carl Sagan's widow a visit in upstate New York in order to improve global relations, at which point he temporarily disappeared and reappeared in the mental ward of a New Jersey hospital. Byron's death knocked the wind out of my family's collective sails. Lee was doubly devastated by losing her brother and having to watch her parents come to terms with the death of their eldest and only son. Our son practically went into shock. He was never quite able to wrap his mind around how his beloved uncle could be so mentally ill he couldn't stand living anymore. For my part, though I was never extremely close to Byron, I was also traumatized by his passing, particularly by the way it impacted my family. Before long, feeling empty and uninspired, I began to experience anxiety that only got worse as the months went by. One day, when I was feeling especially anxious and vulnerable, it occurred to me I'd lost more than my brother-in-law. I'd lost my power animal. Apparently, trauma, not just boredom, can prompt power animals to abandon their hosts. When I booked an appointment with a shaman who had trained under Harner, sure enough, she confirmed that Crow was no longer with me. The unfunny irony was that Byron was an uber materialist who poo-pooed anything remotely woo-woo. Yet here he was, responsible for endangering my well-being by spooking my indwelling spirit. The shaman performed a ceremony to attract a new power animal to me. Typically, we don't pick and choose our power animals. They select us. Crow will always have a special place in my heart, but this time around, Condor chose me. I felt Condor's energy enter me like a menopausal heat wave during the ceremony. I soon started sweating and became extremely lightheaded. Afterwards, I was instructed to go dance my new power animal and continue doing so twice weekly so that Condor would stay with me. I've danced Condor hundreds of times since, usually in the ocean while waiting to catch a wave. I'm sure I look crazier than Byron to people who manage to glance up from their devices long enough to watch me. Maybe I am, but at least I'm alive and inclined to stay that way, with a tremendous creative energy lighting me up from the inside again. Condor medicine has to do with a number of things, but especially with death, or rather with life that emerges from death. Condors feed on carrion, and in so doing, help the earth recycle the dead so that new life can come into being. While dancing, spiraling on imaginary thermal currents with arms outstretched like giant wings, I chant snippets from a song that came to me after Condor did. I call it Condor Song. I'm aware that condors technically have no voice box and mostly communicate through body language. Make of that what you will. Here are the lyrics. Condors riding high, black against the sky. Oh, black against the sky, black against the sky. Condors riding high, black against the sky. Oh, black against the sky, black against the sky. Oh, we live and die to be free. 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 Old boys riding high, black against the sky. Oh, black against the sky, black against the sky. Old boys riding high, black against the sky. Oh, black against the sky, black against the sky. Oh, we live and die to be free. 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 Old boys riding high, black against the sky. Oh, black against the sky, black against the sky. Old boys riding high, black against the sky. Teaches us to live, teaches us to die. Oh, we live and die to be free. 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 Freestyle, free fall, free bird.